Hello, welcome to MyDan Computer Training channel. We're so glad you joined us today. We're actually discussing about Microsoft Word 2016. Microsoft Word 2016. In today's tutorial of attention, we're focusing on the page layout. On that page layout, we will focus attention on margins. So, what is margin? Margin, simply put, are the boundaries that surround the type work. That means this side between where the write-up is to the ending of my page is margin. That is called left margin. This opposite is right margin. This is top margin, whereas this is bottom margin. So how do you determine your margin? That will be our focus. So to do that, kindly open Microsoft Word, come to layout, and after layout, come down here to the top left and click on margin. Well, there are some already predefined margin here you can see. So you go determine whether to use this, okay, that's custom setting, or you want to use normal, you want to use narrow, you want to use moderate, and so on, wide margin, and so on. Take for example, if you use wide margin, you can see that the margin here is getting wider. Both the left and the right are getting wider, whereas the center, or where you have the write-up, are much smaller. So that is what that does when you use wide margin. But if you use narrow margin, observe the margin is becoming very little, and sometimes if we print, it may even cut off part of the write-up. Okay, so that is how it works. But if you want to have your custom margin, that means set your margin the way you want, please come to the bottom. When you have it here, custom margins, please click on it. A dialog box that opens is called page setup dialog box. In today's tutorial, attention will be focusing on that margin. There are much we are going to learn in other page setup, but let's focus attention on margin. Alright, now you have a top, left, bottom, and right margin. So you could set by just clicking either down or up. Now notice that the more you increase it, the wider the margin will be. So the top margin now have been set on 1.1. Alright, let's focus on the left. The left margin have been set on 1.4, whereas the bottom and the right are on 0.5 each. You can see the preview of it how it is. That means on the left side of your margin, you're going to have a bit wide margin. On top of your margin is going to be a bit wide, and the bottom will not be wide. It will be no space as little as 0.5, and the same thing with the others. You could determine which page could just be this section forward. That means from where your cursor is or your pointer is forward, and so on. So that is how you set that. Okay, now let's OK this and see what happened. You have noticed that, haven't you? If you look carefully, you realize that the left and the top margin seems much wider to that of the right as much as the bottom. So that is how you use margin when it comes to Microsoft Word 2016. Alright, so I'm sure we are following. So let's just go back there again and take the custom. This time we want to set a landscape. Landscape makes the page print differently, unlike portrait. So now let's quickly set the landscape. If we set the landscape, you can see by the preview how your page will look like. Okay, you can see it's much different than before, and this is used in most cases when we are working with table with many rows and columns, or maybe we are actually trying to insert a diagram that is actually much wider than the page, or may require you to rotate your page to the landscape. This may be necessary. Or maybe what you are typing, you want it to be very bold and you want it to be wider page to be used, but you still want to print it maybe with A4 or which other page. We will explain paper size in our next tutorial, but landscape can be used in different ways. However, on some occasion, we may have the need to use both landscape and portrait. Okay, I am reducing my screen because I would rather show you the two types, both landscape and portrait. Alright, so you can use both landscape and portrait in a particular document. So let me show you how you can do that in this tutorial. How can you use both landscape and portrait? Take for example, since the entire work now is on landscape, how do you use it as a portrait? I could use this page as a portrait and miss all the pages here. To do that, I will highlight it as you have just seen. I will go back to that same margin and come to the custom margin and click on portrait. After click on portrait, I will come here and says selected text. Selected text. Now selected text is what makes the difference, what make it unique, what make it identify that this is only area I want this to be applicable. Then I click on OK. Now let's see what we have just done. If you notice that this is appearing as a portrait, whereas on this page is on landscape, because I was only selecting that page. If you observe, the upper page is on what? Portrait, whereas the down one is on landscape. If you should go back again to the topmost page, you can see it here. It is landscape, whereas it's a portrait. So you can use this interchangeably. You can use the two at the same time in order to execute that. So that is how much you could use margin. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial videos. Please smash that subscribe button and also like this video, share it with others. I want to see you next of our tutorials. Stay tuned. Thanks so much. Bye for now.